The Pentagon says 2 U.S. service members are dead and a third is missing after Iranian attacks in Jordan. It comes as the U.S. and Iran continue to trade attacks, and in a new message today, Iran's supreme leader is vowing, quote, unforgettable lessons for the U.S. as Tehran suspends its commitments in the peace deal with the U.S.
This as the military advisor to Iran's supreme leader warned of further escalation if the U.S. carries out more attacks.
If the US attacks continue for another 2 or 3 days, we will enter a phase of full-scale offensive and destructive attacks. What does that mean? It means that Iran will no longer limit itself to mere retaliation, and no political border will be safe from Iran's offensive powers.
"16 American troops have now died since the start of this war."
This is a major escalation, Ike, the first U.S. combat deaths in the Iran war since its earliest weeks. U.S. Central Command has a statement in which it says 2 U.S. service members were killed in Jordan as the U.S. defended against Iranian ballistic missiles and drones. The statement says a third service member is said to be missing in action, and 4 more service members were so badly wounded in yesterday's attacks that they had to be medically evacuated to hospitals, but they have since been discharged. In total, some 427 U.S. service members have been wounded and 16 have now lost their lives in the Iran war.
Trump's been slapping around the gay Ayatollah for 7 straight days. But Iran still has some fight left in them. They launched ballistic missiles into Kuwait, hit a water plant. That's terrorism. Axios is reporting Iran's also launching missiles at bases in Saudi Arabia. So far, everything's been intercepted. But here comes the big squeeze. Airstrikes combined with the naval blockade is strangling their economy. And once we step up attacks on bridges and rails in the north, we'll have a land blockade. The goal is to take their oil revenue down to 0. All of these chess moves are setting the table for a massive offensive.
Several villages in Iran are without water after overnight U.S. attacks. That's according to the head of Iran's national water company. Iran says U.S. strikes hit desalination pumps in the city of Jask in southern Hormuz province. The attacks also damaged bridges in the region. U.S. Central Command says its 7th night of operations targeted surveillance sites, underground weapons storage facilities and maritime capabilities. Iranian state media say at least 3 people have been killed in the southern province of Hormuz. Explosions were heard in the cities of Sirak, Bushehr and Bandar Abbas. The critical oil export hub of Qeshm Island was also attacked. Further inland, explosions were reported in the central city of Yazd. The city of La was also targeted. Iran, in turn, has launched attacks across the Gulf region.
What's the fire?
He was handed a new menu of options, like wiping out power plants and double-tapping nuke sites, and then flattening Pickaxe Mountain, where the intel says they could dash and stash their uranium. We're already seeing the pieces move. Trump told Israel to clear the runway. We're sending in dozens of refueling planes to keep our bombers in the air. You don't move that much hardware unless you're planning to use it.
Well, I think our partners in the region, whether they're in Jordan or whether in Bahrain or the other countries that Iran is attacking, are now going to realize that it's not going to go away, that Iran needs to be responsible in its actions and not target civilians. Of course, these are not civilians, but still, civilians support all of our presence abroad, and hopefully no civilians were lost in this action.
And Daryl, what could this mean for more U.S. troops in the region?
I wouldn't think that they would increase the number of troops, of course, other than replacing the personnel that were just lost. but I don't see a grand influx of troops into Jordan, perhaps closer into where Iran is or on ships abroad. But I don't think this should increase numbers.
And Stephen, can you take us through these latest strikes in the Middle East and what we're hearing from Iran?
Well, today, Iran's new supreme leader put out a social media message warning of what he called unforgettable lessons for America. Iran's deputy foreign minister said today his country has suspended its commitments under the Memorandum of Understanding that President Trump signed last month. In the past couple of days, Iran has been targeting civilian infrastructure in Kuwait. The Iranians have struck water and power plants in Kuwait, and an Iranian general said the other day that his country might move from what he called a phase of retaliation to the offensive phase of the war. Today, Kuwait's state-run oil company said one of its facilities was hit. Here in Washington, the White House said this week that Iran was still talking to the U.S., but 10 days now after the president declared the ceasefire over, there is no sign that the two sides are heading back to the table for talks. And now, with the fighting substantially increasing, 2 more Americans have been killed.
We also have more than 2,000 Marines trained in water landings right on Iran's doorstep, the 11th Marine Expeditionary Unit. Trump still hasn't pulled the trigger. A ground assault would be a serious escalation, but the mullahs cannot control the strait.
Isolating the Straits of Hormuz was always part of the plan. So that's why you see bridges being destroyed, because we don't want them to come in and be able to reinforce logistically and begin to recover the capabilities that we're taking away from them. For Iran, the Straits of Hormuz is a strategic asset. They are willing to fight us for it, and we have got to take it away from them and prevent them from ever getting it back under their control again.
At the same time, the president could be looking at limited options if he wants to expand the war, with most experts agreeing a land invasion is not likely at this time.
You're looking at strategic targets. You're not talking about a ground invasion of Iran. You can't get there. It's too hard to do. The country is too large.
The stepped-up attacks are also aimed at pushing Iran back to the bargaining table, and the White House says it's working.
They want to make a deal with us because they are suffering devastating blows on behalf of our United States military.
But the Iranians tell a different story. They say they won't resume talks until the fighting stops, and on Friday, they targeted another civilian ship, part of a strategy to maintain control in the Strait of Hormuz.
The passage of vessels is not important to the U.S. The U.S. is not dependent on the Strait of Hormuz, and Trump has announced it many times.
Iran issued a new warning Friday to countries hosting U.S. military bases, threatening crushing retaliation if the U.S. airstrikes don't stop.
Just looking at this conflict on a wider scale, it's incredibly complex, lots of different countries involved. But we're hearing, again, Gulf countries have been targeted. Is there a red line in which you can see that some of these countries could be brought into this conflict militarily?
I mean, that's a very good question. I mean, Iran has crossed many red lines on the regional arena and also on the international arena in terms of blocking this, international waterways and bringing economic pressure on the